So if 2 years ago you told me that we could buy a brand new modern video card for under $200, I would probably laugh in your face. And then I might cry in a corner because of the absurdity of the video card market at the time. Yet here we are with just that, the RX 6400, AMD's $160 entry-level video card. And I'm not sure how I feel about it, to be honest. AMD quietly released this card on Wednesday, April 20th, and as soon as I saw it in stock, I sprinted right to my computer and I overnighted it to my apartment. I, and I'm sure tons of you guys too, have been waiting so long for a video card like this, one that doesn't require any external power. It's under $200, it comes in a low profile or ITX form factor, it's modern, just checks every box that we could want. And availability isn't bad. Even though it's on back order on Newegg, it's going to be available within a couple of days, and it's still available at MSRP right now on Amazon, at least while I'm recording this video. On paper, great. But if you look under the hood, you see that there are a few concerns, and it really is a product of its time. Firstly, let's start with some of the great stuff. The 6400 literally sips power. While I was gaming, I think I peaked at 123 watts straight from the wall, so full system power consumption, and it typically stayed under 120. And with a full stress test in my system, we peaked at 209 watts, and that's with a pretty beefy setup. We have a Ryzen 7 5800X, a 105 watt TDP CPU, 32 gigs of RAM, 3 storage devices. So yeah, your office PC doesn't have anything to worry about. It should power this fine. Temperatures are totally fine too, a little higher than I was expecting from such a small GPU, but we never went over 75 degrees while gaming. All right, so now the not so great. The 6400 suffers from the same ill fate of its older brother, the 6500 XT. It only has 4 PCIe lanes. If that sounds like gibberish to you, totally fine. Here's the gist of it. If you have a PCIe Gen 4 motherboard and CPU, you need both, then the next 20 seconds won't apply to you, so skip it or cover your ears or something. But if you have a PCIe Gen 3 motherboard and CPU, then your theoretical maximum bandwidth is going to be cut in half. And at the moment, that's a lot of older office computers and a lot of modern budget gaming computers. If you're on an even older office PC with PCIe Gen 2, then your maximum theoretical bandwidth will be cut in a quarter. And for some games, it sadly makes a big difference. Far Cry 6, for example, which also didn't bode well with the 6500 XT, has a similar fate on the 6400. Great on PCIe Gen 4, but progressively worsens as the PCIe generation decreases. It's not the difference between playable and unplayable, thankfully, but it does make a difference. Now, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a similar story. Solid performance with PCIe Gen 4 and a slow downward creep as we use older PCIe technology. 60 FPS is still achievable on Gen 3 though, even at 1080p. Cyberpunk is where the PCIe generation can arguably make a difference between playable and unplayable. The average FPS difference isn't huge, but the 1% lows on Gen 3 dip in the mid-20s, something you don't want even in a single player game. FSR can definitely alleviate some of that pain, and you can always lower the settings. In older games and esport games, we don't see a big difference between Gen 4 and Gen 3 on the 6400, or if there is a difference, the FPS is already good enough where you probably won't care if you're in the target audience for this video card. Even PCIe Gen 2 is playable across the board with over 60 FPS average, though I still don't recommend using that obviously. If you plan on playing games like Valorant or Apex or older games, the 6400 will work well even on PCIe Gen 3. And in good old Time Spy and Firestrike by 3D Mark, we see that synthetic benchmarks aren't the be-all end-all for benchmarks. The 1650 is slower than the 6400, yet performs similarly, if not better, in my game benchmark runs. So I had my assistant crunch the numbers, and by assistant I really mean me. And here is the summary. The 6400 is approximately 3.5% slower than the 1650 at 1080p using Gen 4, 7.5% slower on Gen 3, and 25% slower on Gen 2, though that shouldn't really apply to most people. So it's really within spitting distance of a GTX 1650. If we look at MSRP, we see that the 1650 is slightly better value at MSRP than the 6400, Once inflation is taken into account though, the 1650 would be about $166 today, so it would be a little bit worse. Now we don't really live in the world of MSRP anymore. It's improving in some instances, but for the most part, it's going to be higher than that. But this will give you an idea of whether or not the 6400 will give you a generational improvement in value from the previous generations. Once we use the average eBay price of the 1650, we see that the 6400 is better value. It also comes brand new, which is always preferred. Retail is even worse for the 1650 at $210 on the cheapest end that I could find. As of recording this video, the 6400 looks like an absolute king next to it. So if the 6400 is such great value, Ozzy, why are you concerned about it? That is a great question, and I'm so glad you asked. The 6400 is a no-brainer if you need a low-profile video card. It's the best and most affordable modern low-profile video card out there right now, period. But I would be remiss to not mention the drawbacks, and if you've watched 6500 XT reviews, this might seem like a repeat. This video card lacks AV1 decoding and H.265 encoding, which is used for like streaming 4K Netflix, for example, or for streaming gameplay or recording gameplay. It also only has 2 display out ports. I mean, really, like the GT210 has more than that. So that part is a little bit weird. And then the $160 price tag of the 6400 is just low enough where you're like, okay, I think I can swing this. This seems like a decent deal. And it's just separated far enough from the 6500 XT where you would be questioning whether or not the extra $40, $50 is worth it. Should I get the 6500 XT? And then you realize the 6500 XT has the exact same problems as the 6400, and then the crippled PCIe lanes are just rough. Just rough. For the 6400, it's not as drastic as the 6500 XT simply because it's a slower card, but I think AMD is just assuming that most people have PCIe Gen 4 hardware, and most people just don't. But then you sit down and you ask yourself, what other option do I have? Even if you account for PCIe Gen 3 performance, there's nothing on the new market that has this value in this price bracket right now. And so the predicament that you might find yourself in is, do I not recommend this because of its obvious drawbacks and relatively poor generational value? Or do I recommend it because it's literally the best option right now? To me, I think if you need the low profile, the 6400 is the right one to get. If that doesn't matter to you, then I still think the 6400 isn't a bad choice right now. But I will say this, if the 1650 gets within $10 of the 6400, that is the better choice, hands down. I want to say almost 100% of the time. Either way, I'm glad that we're finally getting some love in this price bracket. It's been a long time since we got something like that brand new. It's a step in the right direction, a small step, albeit still a step. And that's it for this video, guys. If you guys liked it, then leave a like. If you loved it, share, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And I don't know if I'm going to give away the 6400. I think I want to at some point, but I might need it for a future video. I want to do a little bit more testing on this guy, see what else it can do. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.